Okay, folks, we're ready to start. If everybody will stand, please, we're going to play the National Anthem.
Attention, guys.
The St. Genevieve Museum is very honored to put on this display and have the people here that are responsible for the display. So we're going to start this off with a prayer by the chaplain, Paul Kiss, from the Sons of the Union Soldiers, Camp 326. Paul?
Please uncover. As we stand for a moment, let there rise in your heart a prayer beseeching the Father of us all to grant Private Moses Riney, Civil War veteran, a glory that is his because of his service for freedom and country. May his portrait be remembered by all. Cover.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. Folks, our mayor is a very busy person, but he's made time into his schedule to come out here and address this crowd. Mr. Paul Hausler, our mayor. Thank you, Paul.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and it's an honor to be here. And I want to, on behalf of the city of St. Genevieve, welcome you all. Welcome Moses' family here to our beautiful little town, and hopefully you'll just enjoy this day, because it is a great day. And, as I was looking and seeing what I was going to talk about today, what stands out to me about this man, and there's a lot of great history, and I don't know a lot of that history, but what stood out to me was his faith, and that's why I believe this man has got such a legacy that it goes on today, and your family are proof of that. And I took a class several years ago about, it's called Biblical Manhood, and there was 4 points to this class, and they've always stuck with me because I hadn't always been that way. But one of the things that we have to do as men is to accept responsibility. You know what? And there's so much truth in that, and God's word's very clear about that we have to accept responsibility for our actions. Even though we might have lousy or difficult circumstances, we accept responsibility. You have to reject passivity, because it's very easy to put it off and not worry about it, but we have to reject that. You have to lead courageously. This man led his family courageously through trial and tribulation, but he led courageously. And most important of all, I believe he looked forward to the greater reward, and that his reward is in heaven with the Father. And I'll guarantee you that's where he is today, enjoying his greater reward. And his family is here. We all get left behind, but those are traits that he left you all, and left all of us, and it's a great opportunity to follow in his footsteps and to enjoy his legacy and keep going. That's why I love the history that's in this town, and there's people in this town that they're willing to share that history, and they're well versed, and they care because they care about their community. So, and with that, I just thank you very much for the opportunity to be here, and God bless each and every one of you.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the words. There are some people here that carried this torch, that got it started and made sure that we got to this point. one of those people is Anita Alsop. Anita is actually the person that painted this painting. So she's going to address this crowd, tell you what it means to her and what had her do this for us. So Anita.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the St. Genevieve Museum and Learning Center board for accepting my portrait painting of Moses Riney. I want to make sure you can hear me all the way to the back. Can you hear me back there? It's. Is this better? Thank you, Bob. Robert, sorry. Recently, I had a little medical problem, and a very good friend that is a medical professional told me to remember that I was not a teenager. That came as a real shock to me. Then I remembered about 20 years ago, I arrived at a very important board meeting, and I went to introduce my very good friend seated next to me, and I could not think of her name. That was very embarrassing. So I decided that I would write and read my presentation. When I asked what subject would be best, I was told, "What made you decide to paint the portrait of Moses?" If it had not been for my son, Greg Elder, seated right down here, I would not have known anything about Moses Riney. He first told me about the sons of the Union veterans of the Civil War dedication of a marker that was placed on the grave of Moses during a ceremony at the cemetery in St. Mary, and over 50 people attended, many family members and others. He had several telephone conversations with Patricia Weber, the author of the book, A Special Story, Moses Riney, and ordered her book. I was reading it at the same time that he was. The story was contagious. We are looking into the possibility of getting Pat Weber to do a second printing of this book to be available in this gift shop. Anyone that would like to request a copy, please let me know. Anyway, Greg began to talk to me about a plan on his mind, wanting to do something for the Immaculate Conception preservation effort, especially since that church was very important in the life of the family of Moses and our family as well. A celebration of the life of Moses Riney on the 100th year of his passing with art became the goal. The spirit of art perseveres in St. Genevieve against all odds. Greg asked me if I would paint a portrait, and after learning more about Moses, I said yes. He started a Facebook group called Uncle Moses, naming the group because of this sentence. This is Pat Weber's book, and that was the St. Mary Weekly Review that wrote this long, loving obituary of Moses Riney. And the reason the Facebook group was called Uncle Moses was that this was the sentence that was most befitting. Uncle Mose, as he was familiarly known by everybody in town, had no enemies and was respected by both whites and the colored people. It was pretty astounding that in a small paper that large obituary was written about this man. The group, during COVID especially, were able to make this celebration a very big success. This Facebook group still exists, and Michael Schaaf continues to do research and post more findings frequently. If interested, please join the group. I recommend it. A recent discovery by Michael Schaaf occurred. On page 21 in Pat's book, a 1912 document, Declaration for Pension, was signed by someone else. Between his names, his X mark, as usual. On writing of his own name. I'm sorry. On page 20, the 1915 document, Department of Interior, was signed by the writing of his own name, which we had never actually seen before. After all this man accomplished, he was known not to be able to read or to write. But in his senior years, he signed. That's something to give a lot of thought to. Painting this portrait of Moses brought about many different emotions. As I tried to imagine what his life challenges could have been like, as well as his survival with dignity. Somehow the message became very clear. This story needs to be told to as many people as possible. Each person can interpret what this story means to them. It is a learning experience. This is why the St. Genevieve Museum and Learning Center is the right place for this portrait. There are 9 different matted prints of the Moses portrait than those that had been sold before in the gift shop. And they will be sold to commemorate this event. The money raised will be offered to Patricia Weber to request a second printing of her book, A Special Story, Moses Riney, that can be sold in this gift shop. Also, very likely sold at the Perry County Museum gift shop as well. Director Bill Hart has interest, as this story is a part of Perry County's history as well. Thanks again for all of you present for being here, and thank you to the St. Genevieve Museum and Learning Center.
Tell them how much it's going to cost.
We discussed the price of this, and since there's only 9, I own one that I have framed, and you can see it in the gift shop. We're going to ask $50, and that will help Pat to do the second printing because she has been waiting. I hope you can hear me in the back. I forget to use this. Anyway, thank you all.
Thank you, Anita. The second person responsible for this presentation and working with the museum is Mr. Mike Shaw. He's with the Sons of the Union Soldiers, Camp 326. Mike is going to come up and tell you about the history of Moses Riney and give you some background on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you all for being here. To tell the story of Moses Riney, one must start with his mother, who was known as Melinda Riney. Melinda was a slave owned by Gabriel Duvall. This gentleman died, and on February 10th, 1842, Melinda was purchased by Thomas Edward Riney for $600. At the same time, Thomas Riney purchased 2 children of Melinda. A boy named David, 2 years old, for $200. A baby, 4 months old, named George, for $100. Melinda also had one other child at the time, a daughter named Celeste. She was 5 years old. She was not kept with her mother, but purchased by Moses Farrar for $250. With this purchase of Melinda by Thomas Edward Riney, the story of Moses begins. Moses Riney was born at Perry County, Missouri. On his baptism record from the Church of the Barons, his birth date is listed as January 18, 1845. His death certificate lists January 18, 1844. His parents are listed as Melinda Riney and a gentleman named Alfred or Anthony Farrar. Moses had a twin brother named Josiah, also called Joseph. This is the first record that Moses has been found on. The next time I find him is the 1846 Barons Parish Census, where he and his mother, Melinda, and at least 3 of his siblings are listed as servants under the Riney family. After that record, Moses is next found on a slave schedule in the year 1850, where he is listed only by age and sex. Thomas Edward Riney, the slave owner of Moses, Thomas Edward Ronnie, the slave owner of Moses, died on February 19, 1859. In his will, he gave Moses, his mother, and several of Moses' siblings to his second wife, Sarah Ann French Riney. Moses once again is listed on another slave schedule for the year 1860, which again just lists his age and sex, his master being Sarah Ann Riney, the widow of Thomas Riney. The slave schedule of 1860 is also the last time we find Moses. Melinda, what happened to her, we do not know. One thing I might add is the tax list for the Thomas Riney estate, numbered 633. That shows us land he owns Perryville, lots 14, 16, 66, totaling 1,569 acres. And it lists of slaves. Melinda, mother of Moses, 50 years old, $600. James, 27 years old, $1,100. Helen, 24 years old, $900. Moses, 14 years old, $900. Julia, 3 years old, $300. Mary, 1 year old, $150. Total value of the Riney slaves was $3,950. This is the only record I found that shows the value of Moses to the slave owner, Thomas Riney. On January 1st, 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation went into effect. But for those slaves living in Missouri, it meant nothing at all. It would be over 2 years later before slaves in Missouri would be free. On September 12, 1863, Moses Riney was married to Mary Jane Burgett in Perry County, Missouri. While the Catholic Church married slaves, it was actually against the law. Moses' wife, Mary Jane Burgett, is the daughter of Michael Burgett and Clara Burns. Mary Jane Burgett is listed on baptism records of her children at Immaculate Conception Catholic Church, St. Mary's, Missouri, as Mary Jane Evans. The only time I find her listed with the name of Burgett is on her death certificate and on pension files. So who was Mary Jane Burgett? Why was she listed as Mary Jane Evans on church records? I think the answer to all of this can be found in Perry County Heritage, Volume 38, 2020. In an article written by Denise Lincoln titled The Civil War History of Moses Riney, U.S. colored troops, Moses' wife, Mary Riney, gave a deposition in 1911 for another former slave named Harrison Davis, which clarified in her own words her relationship in slave times and freedom. She said, and I quote, "I was born a slave in Perry County, Missouri, and lived there about 5 miles from St. Mary's, Missouri, southeast of here, until 1908, since which I resided in St. Mary's, Missouri. I was in Illinois from 1864 to 1866. I was a slave of Perry Evans, who was the father-in-law of Harrison Davis, owner of Erastus Davis." From this one tiny record, we learn a lot about the wife of Moses and why Evans is used as her surname on baptism records of her children. Interestingly enough, Perry Evans, the master of Mary Jane, died in 1859. In his will, Mary Jane Burgett Riney was given to his daughter, Emily Evans. One other interesting thing about the will of Perry Evans is the fact that he gave a slave woman named Clara and 2 of her children to another one of his daughters, Nancy Evan Burns, the wife of Henry T. Burns. The woman named Clara appears to be the mother of Mary Jane Burgett, known on records as Clara Burns. On May 22, 1863, the United States War Department issued General Order Number 143, creating the United States Colored Troops. This order created the opportunity for slaves like Moses Riney to join the United States Colored Troops. Moses Riney made a decision in February 1864 to join the Union Army. This was most likely his first opportunity to make a decision on his own. I will again, in Moses' own words, taken from the Civil War History of Moses Riney, U.S. Colored Infantry, by Denise Lincoln. Moses said, "I was enlisted about February 15, 1865, under Galloway and Ross, the last names of the recruiting officers at Cape Girardeau, Missouri. Galloway and Ross were men out in rowing men. They got me in Perry County in the bottom 4.5 miles southeast of St. Mary. His testimony was that he was recruited from the bottomland field belonging to Thomas Edward Riney, Jr., the son of his former master, also called Thomas Edward Riney. The place called the bottomland would be the Boys' Brule Bottoms. On February 20th, 1864, Moses enlisted at Cape Girardeau, Missouri. On March 8th, 1864, Moses was mustered into service at Benton Barracks, St. Louis, Missouri, rank of private. From his obituary and the testimony of his wife, Mary Jane Burgett Riney, that while Moses was in service, she lived in Sparta, Illinois, with a member of the White Riney family. With his wife in Sparta, Illinois, Moses began his military service. The 4th Missouri Regiment of Colored Infantry was an African-American infantry regiment that served in the Union Army during the Civil War. It was redesignated the 68th Regiment of U.S. Colored Troops on March 11, 1864. Engagements of the 68th Regiment United States Colored Troops. Battle of Tupelo, Battle of Old Town Creek, Siege of Fort Blakely, Assault on Fort Blakely, and Occupation of Mobile. These are engagements we know that Moses Riney was part of. In his obituary, it states that Moses was at Fort Pillow during this battle. Many black soldiers were slaughtered after their surrender, according to history. How it came to be in Moses' obituary, I can't tell you, but the fact is, Moses' regiment was not part of that battle. Now, no doubt, Moses knew of the atrocities that befell his fellow black troops, but history tells us that Moses' regiment left St. Louis bound for Memphis, Tennessee, about 7 weeks after the incident at Fort Pillow. In one record from the National Archives and Record Center, Washington, D.C., obtained by Denise Lincoln for her article in the Perry County Heritage, Moses had this to say about the Battle of Fort Pillow. This is a small excerpt from Denise Lincoln's story about Moses Ronnie's military service. From April 1 to 9, they participated in a siege, assault, and ultimate capture of Fort Blakely. Moses Ronnie, promoted to the extra duties and responsibilities of corporal, recalled the intensity of the battle experience. He said, "We were charging bayonets. They ordered us to retreat. I told my men not to retreat, to remember what they gave us at Fort Pillow." Moses also talked about a Captain Gagger who was killed there. This would be Captain George Geiger, killed in action on April 9, 1865. He commanded Company C. Moses was a member of Company A. Ironically, this battle ended 6 hours after General Robert E. Lee had surrendered at Appomattox, about 800 miles away. On February 1st, 1866, the 68th Regiment U.S. Colored Troops was mustered out of service at Camp Parapet, north of New Orleans, Louisiana. Corporal Moses Ronnie was headed home. Moses Ronnie's name is listed on the African American Civil War Memorial, Regiment United States Colored Troops at Washington, D.C. I might add, the only 2 siblings of Moses who we have been able to find, David and Gabriel, are also listed on the memorial. They served in the 62nd Regiment. The 1870 census for Saline Township, Perry, Missouri, lists Moses, his wife Mary Jane, 2 of his children, Henry and Mary Johanna, also in the household. Is his siblings of Moses' wife. The 1880 census also finds Moses living in Saline, Perry, Missouri, with his wife and 6 children. In October 21, 1882, Moses purchased a tract of land from Charles Francis Lawrence in Perry County, Missouri. The property, which is off Highway H in Saline, Perry, Missouri, is located on what is now known PCR 950. By 1900, Moses seemed to prosper on the land. He was now farming. He owned this piece of land, and his family was growing in total. Moses and Mary Jane Burgett Riney had 13 children, although we can only account for 9 of them. And one of those, a little boy, was born and died in 1892. So by 1900, only 8 of the 13 children of Moses were living. From Civil War pension records, we learned that Moses and Mary Jane moved in the town of St. Mary's, St. Genevieve County, Missouri, in 1908. On the 1910 census, Moses living on the 5th Street in St. Mary, and the man who had been a slave owned his own home there free and clear. Immaculate Conception Catholic Church in St. Mary's played an important part in the lives of Moses and his family. Most of his children were baptized there, and many of them were married at the church in St. Mary. From a few old newspaper articles, I learned the education of his children must have been important to him. One article talks about one of his daughters attending the Thompson Colored School. One other thing that is found on the 1900 and 1910 census is the fact that Moses and Mary Jane helped raise the number of their grandchildren. By 1910, 3 more of the children of Moses Ronnie had died, and like I stated above, Moses provided for these grandchildren. On February 16, 1921, at 10 a.m., Moses Ronnie passed away at his home on 5th Street in the little town of St. Mary's. Moses had come to be one of the most respected citizens of the community. On February 17th, his funeral was held at Immaculate Conception Church, and his body was laid to rest at the cemetery at St. Mary's. His obituary, which was published in the St. Mary's Weekly on February 25, 1921, reads more like a tribute to him. The respect that was given to Moses in his obituary is normally held for men of power and wealth. Considering the times and the fact this was a white-owned newspaper, what an honor for this man. Roughly 10 years later, on May 27, 1930, the beloved wife of Moses, Mary Jane Burgett, died at their home in St. Mary's. On Saturday, July 6, 2019, The Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War honored Corporal Moses Riney by placing a plaque on his tombstone, honoring his service to his country. Many of Moses' descendants were present for the event, and at the bottom of the plaque it simply reads, "Freedom for Eternity." On February 23rd, 2021, at Immaculate Conception Church, St. Mary, Missouri, several local artists unveiled their artwork pertaining to the life of Moses Riney. It was on this evening that Anita Alsep displayed her amazing painting of Moses Riney. Once again, a number of members of the Riney family were present. I don't believe the story of Moses Riney would be complete without listing his known children of Moses and Mary Jane Burgett Riney. Henry W. Riney, 1868 to 1904. Mary Jane Joanna Riney, 1870 to 1941. Mary Louise Riney, 1873 to 1901. Joseph Riney, 1875 to 1950. Mary Matilda Tilley Riney, 1877 to 1954. George Robert Riney, 1880 to 1935. Rosabelle Mary Riney, 1882 to 1901. Clara Della Riney, 1885, death date unknown. Infant son Riney, 1892 to 1892. Most of the Riney children are buried at the cemetery in St. Mary, St. Genevieve County, Missouri. I wish to thank the following people and organizations who helped this day possible. Mrs. Pat Weber, her book, A Special Story, Moses Riney. But besides just Pat, a woman that become dear friends with her, Blondell Mary Meemaw Riney Underwood. Their friendship helped be the basis for that book. Denise Lincoln for her research on Moses' Civil War experience, the Perry County Historical Society, and the records from Immaculate Conception Catholic Church, St. Mary, Missouri. Anita Alsep for this beautiful painting of Moses. The Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War who come together to help tell the story of Civil War veterans. But most of all, the Riney family who have opened their hearts and let us share with them the story of their ancestor, Corporal Moses Riney. Honor guard.
Firing details. Attention. About face. Hold. Firing detail. High elevation. Ready. Aim. Fire. Recover arms. Reload. Fire detail. Ready. Aim. Fire. Recover arms. Reload. Ready. Aim. Fire. Recover arms. Shoulder arms. About face. Present arms. Shoulder arms. Order arms.
Well, now score it in, Marty. Lead us in. Okay.
Fire and detail.
Okay, from here, we're going to have the photo of Moses Riney taken to the place where it's going to be hung in the museum as a tribute and the story to be told here in the museum. We want to thank the Sons of the Union Soldiers, Camp 326, who will take the painting. They'll go through these doors here and go up the steps to where it's going to rest. There is an elevator back here in the back or through the museum, so anybody that needs to use an elevator, please feel free to do that. And we'll meet on the top floor. After that, we're going to have a presentation by Mr. Greg Wolf. Greg, if you'll raise your hand, please, on the Forged in Missouri, Ulysses Grant and the Show Me State. It'll take place upstairs after we place the Moses Riney photo in place. We'll get ready to go. Thank you. Okay, folks, we'll fall in right here. Anybody needs to use the elevator, please help yourself. If you want to go up these steps, we'll go in the back door, or you can go through the museum and get to the elevator.